It may seem that for the last few weeks here at the Center for Spiritual Living Prescott, there has been an emphasis on money. Last week we learned at the community meeting that the earth plane fact of the matter is that the center has a monthly deficit. And some people may find that they too are dealing with a financial deficit in their own lives, and that incoming funds simply aren't covering the outgoing expenses. So yesterday afternoon, when Reverend Tracy called me and asked me if I had a sermon in my pocket that I could share today, I said yes. I knew it would be on abundance. So here it is. This is going to be what I have been wanting to offer you as a 4-week free class called Abundance. But you're going to get this 4-week free abundance class condensed in the remaining 18 minutes. Okay. So, thank you. That laughter feels so good. Thank you. Okay, there are many required classes that we must take in order to become a licensed practitioner. And one of them is called Financial Freedom. And I start here because it was there that I learned the basic foundation that we stand upon as we start on the path of healing and revealing in the area of finances. And really, this is in every aspect and area of our lives, but today we're looking at finances, at money. So here's your warning. I feel like I had a dog and knew I didn't like it to bark because it was startling me, so I go, rah. So I'm doing this for you. I'm going, rah. Okay, your warning, buckle up. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The foundation is God. Yes, G-O-D. Not universe, not higher power, but God. Now, there's a reason that our founder, Ernest Holmes, uses so many adjectives. I forget if someone knows in the Science of Mind textbook, is it maybe Mel knows, it's like 100 or 150 adjectives he uses in place of the name of God. And he did this because he knew that so many people didn't feel comfortable with the word God. I call it the G word. And so I get this. But I was raised in Unity, which is like Centers for Spiritual Living, New Thought. And so from the get-go, I learned a lot about God. I learned that I am a perfect child of God. That was one of the first sentences I spoke. So when my mother would punish me, I'd say, I'm a perfect child of God. Why are you punishing me? And she would say, you are a perfect child of God, but your behavior wasn't perfect. And then I learned that God is love, and that God made me out of its love into its love. So one day I came home from preschool, and I was furious at a classmate who had stolen all of the pill bugs I had gathered from the playground. And I declared, I hate Karen Egan. And my mother told me that I couldn't hate her because as a perfect child of God, I am the love that God is, so there's no such thing as hate in me or about me. I said, oh, no. There's a part of me that you can't see that hates her. And she said, no, because you are only love. And I said, oh, no, there's a teeny tiny part of me, really teeny, that's hidden that hates Karen Egan. And she says, no, you are a perfect child of God. You are only love. I learned that God is always present, always here for me, always loving me. And how I learned this was the first and only prayer I ever learned as a child. And some of you may know this as the Unity Prayer of Protection. The light of God surrounds me. The love of God enfolds me. The power of God protects me. The presence of God watches over me. Wherever I am, God is. Yes, I was taught to believe in a God that loves unconditional love, that loves me unconditionally, that loves everything unconditionally as its beloved. So not everyone is so fortunate. Many times this is especially so if someone's raised in a mainline Judeo-Christian religion. So one of the first things I do when someone asks me to pray with them is I ask them, are you comfortable with the word God? And if they hesitate, I then ask them what word works for them, and that's the word we use to pray. But as I learned in Financial Freedom, we must look at our concept of God squarely in the eye. Or as my Jewish friend might say, have a come to Jesus talk about what we believe about God. So now you're going to go, oh boy. She's talking ad nauseum about God, and now she brings up Jesus. I warned you, buckle up. Okay. So on her website, writer Becky Hunter shares her experience using Julian Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, to help her with her creativity. The heading is titled, The Artist's Way, Recovering a Sense of Abundance. She writes, Cameron insists that it is our God concept that needs altering. She suggests journaling on our childhood ideas of God and coming up with a new, non-toxic, non-stale spiritual notions. She writes, on the one hand, we give lip service to the notion that God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. And then on the other, we secretly think that God wants us to be broke. If we are going to be so decadent as to want to be artists. So you can substitute artists for whatever it is you want to do or be. Do we have any proof for these ideas about God? Personally, I think that for some of us, and this is the writer, Becky Hunter, sharing, she says, I think for some of us, including me, even exploring notions of God and money is a little too painful, weird, or even inappropriate. So this is why in the first week of Financial Freedom, we are given a questionnaire on God, asking what we were raised to believe about God, who taught us about God, how did we create our concept of God, and many more questions. This is because we must be conscious of what we believe about God. If we secretly believe that God will punish us or doesn't care about us, this will reflect in how we deal with everything, including money. This is because if we have such beliefs about God, then we're not believing that we are one with and of God. Rather, we believe that we're separate from God. And if we're separate from God, then we believe we are separate from one another. And this means that when it comes to money, it's my money. So there's no sense of connective wholeness, but rather a disconnected isolation. And with this disconnect comes the belief and feeling that if one doesn't look out for themselves, they'll lose what they already have or what they may get. So this is where the concept of prosperity, especially in some New Thought circles, can get a little tricky. Because what's the opposite of prosperity? It's lack. So if someone tells me, but I'm doing prosperity affirmations and nothing is working, I understand. It's because all the affirmations will affirm is they're feeling disconnected and alone, that they are lacking and they have to affirm louder, harder, and more often to get that elusive prosperity. And then when someone tells me, I did all of these prosperity affirmations and I'm a great manifester. I manifested a great pay raise. I also understand that they may come back to me later and say, I'm doing more and more prosperity affirmations, but nothing's working. And then they feel like a failure. So all of this is missing one essential element, and that is God. When we look only to ourselves and not to God, we may hit a prosperity run and call out to everyone how great we are at manifesting. But then when the prosperity run runs dry, we'll want to hide because we believe once again we failed. I can't think of a more alone place to be when we believe that we have to do everything on our own. This is why it's so important to know what foundation we're standing on before we step forward onto the path of knowing and living true abundance. Are we standing on a flimsy foundation of half-read self-help books, expensive workshops, and believing that we can do it if we try hard enough and force ourselves to think only positive thoughts? Or are we standing on a firm foundation of unshakable faith in God as being the source of all supply that we are one with and of? Standing on this firm foundation, we can know no such thing as lack because God doesn't know lack. We can only know abundance because God only knows abundance. To quote Ernest Holmes, it has been said that we can know God only insofar as we can become God. Okay, now that we have our foundation, we can start walking the path of abundance. And what we start with is this: abundance is a feeling. Ernest Holmes states the abundance you desire to experience must first be an experience in your mind. I know people who have millions in the bank, and yet when asked how financially secure they feel, they'll answer they don't feel secure at all. They could lose everything. So if the feeling of lack doesn't go away with every dollar we have in our bank account, then how do we start to feel abundant? We tune into abundance. Think about how when you're feeling a little bit tired and then a great upbeat song comes on the radio, and all of a sudden you're feeling much more energetic. It's the same with abundance. To quote Wayne Dyer, abundance is not something we acquire, it's something we tune into. One way to tune into abundance and to feel it is to open all our senses. What we see, hear, touch, taste, smell. Thomas Lloyd Qualls writes, "The universe is abundant and supports each of us. In order to see this, though, we must open all of our senses." Looking to the natural state of the universe with an open mind and open heart and all of our senses, we can feel it is indeed an abundant universe. One of the many wonderful things I love about living here and after having lived all of my life in Southern California is the change of seasons. I love seeing how the bare trees in the winter become green and lush as it becomes warmer, and then lose their leaves and become bare in the winter once again. It shows me that nature trusts in this abundant universe to give it all it needs. The trees don't wither off and die because they lose their leaves. No, they grow their roots deeper into the nourishing soil in preparation to grow more leaves. I love the winds that sweep everything in its way, sometimes with a howl and a growl. One translation of the word wind in Spanish is el aliento, which means breath, encouragement. This wide sweeping of the winds gives me a breath of encouragement, as though it is wiping my slate clean to start anew. And I love the floral, woodsy smell of my garden, intensified after a monsoon washes over it. Tuning into abundance with all our senses, we start to feel abundant and see abundance all around us. Now, I'm not talking Mercedes-Benz and Louis Vuitton. I'm talking riches beyond those that can be bought. The riches of our community here. How we come together every week with one another as we share this learning journey. The riches of our loved ones who we share our lives with. The riches of giving ourselves time and space to explore our creative talents. the riches of being in nature and witnessing all of its glorious wonders. Again, these are riches that cannot be bought with money. When we start to see with new eyes the rich abundance all around us, then we can start to feel the same rich abundance within us, for we are all connected as one. We start to believe that divine goodness is our divine inheritance as the divine offspring of our Father, Mother, God. So now that we are on a firm foundation of belief in the absolute goodness of God being the source of all our supply, and we are feeling this divine abundance within us, as us, through us, we step upward and onward. And as we do so, seeing and feeling all of this abundance, we're overcome with a sense of gratitude. Ernest Holmes writes, "Gratitude is the attitude that opens the door to abundance." So consider this: when we are feeling truly, madly, deeply grateful, there is no such thing as lack. We are only feeling the overflow of thanksgiving. When I do my daily spiritual practice, I pray out loud. And when I get to the Thanksgiving step, almost always I feel a slight tingle in my nose. And sometimes my eyes will water because the well of gratitude runs that deep. When we are grateful, we're telling God that we trust God. We may not see the big picture, but the glimmers that we do see make us feel an awe of appreciation for this abundant universe that goes beyond words. And a grateful heart is an open and receptive heart and mind. Ernest writes, "When we conceive a new idea, we are thinking directly from the creativity of God." I believe that the divine ideas that God gives us and we receive is our abundance. As Ernest writes, we must be convinced that abundance is the natural state of the universe. To experience and accept abundance in our life, we must be convinced that as we conceive and believe, the universe handles the details. This is what many practitioners call treat and move your feet. This means treating is praying. So we pray and meditate and receive divine guidance, divine direction, divine ideas. And we're grateful for these divine ideas. And trusting God, we go forward in co-partnership with God to move into co-creating the divine idea into manifestation. We by ourselves are not doing the manifesting. Rather, we are in partnership with God, co-creating. We move forward believing that God is the invisible partner in our lives and affirm that divine love goes before us and prepares the way. Again, quoting our founder, Ernest Holmes. So to give a quick recap, first we look at our concept of God, our relationship with God. And when we come to a place of firmly believing, we are one with and of God, and all that God is good, a goodness beyond any opposite, that has no opposite. Then we have this foundation to stand firmly upon as we move forward. The next step is how to know that abundance is a feeling that is nurtured. How do we do this? We do this with opening our senses, with really tuning into that abundance. And it's a feeling that's nurtured when we see the absolute truth that we ourselves are inherently abundant, that our lives are filled with an abundance beyond anything that can be bought, an abundance of riches that can never, ever be purchased. And the next step is that with this feeling of abundance, our hearts are open to receiving the organic overflow of gratitude for this divine abundance. The next step is that with this open mind and open receptive heart, we welcome the abundance of divine ideas that God gives us and trust God as we act upon them in sacred partnership. Okay, so there's one more step to knowing, living, being abundant. Does anyone know what this is? Giving. God, you guys should go on Jeopardy. Okay. So it is doing a deep dive into the flow of divine reciprocity. We are grateful for all the abundance God gives us, and with open hearts, we give back to God. We give back to God as God is the one life that dwells within everything seen and unseen, in all sentient beings, in all things, in all time. We give as we receive, with gratitude and knowing we are always one with and of God. We give and receive in partnership with God, knowing that God is the source of all supply. We give with open hearts and without expectation, but with the joy of gratitude for such a rich life full of God's goodness. So you got this. The last step is about this divine reciprocity. And this is about an abundance that you can never buy. It is this feeling, and it is this feeling of security. That's the bottom line. When we feel secure and safe in the world, there is nothing better than knowing that we are definitely secure and safe, that God is holding us, loving us, comforting us. And when you feel that secure and safe, you don't think about anything known as lack. You just know that you can give and receive. But you can't really give unless you know that what you are giving is not yours and yours alone, but what God has given to you to have stewardship over. And so you give with an open heart that is wisely discerning. You give without expectation of any return, because what you are giving is the overflow of what you have already received. You give because you trust that God is the source of all your supply, and that God only knows to give of itself without condition, without hesitation, and without judgment. And so that is how we give and live abundance. So Bob is going to do this, and then we're going to put that into words with the prayer of protection that I talked about, because abundance is a feeling of security. So we can say this together. The light of God surrounds me. Say it again. The light of God surrounds me. The love of God enfolds me. The love of God enfolds me. The power of God protects me. The power of God protects me. The presence of God watches over me. The presence of God watches over me. Wherever I am, God is. Where I am, God is. And so it is.